As we all know, the Mariners' biggest offensive additions have mostly been disappointing so far. Why is that? Why does this keep happening? We'll answer that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, May 27th, 2024. This is Tidy Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday. But before we get into that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. Let's get into your questions. We're going to start here with Distraught. Distraught wants to know, two-parter. At what point should we stop trusting the front office's process? I've been a Jerry and Justin fan the past couple years, and I've liked the moves they've made on paper, but they keep falling short. Do you have any idea why this keeps inexplicably happening?
How long do you trust the process? Let's see. Have they been in playoff position each of the last 3 years? Did they go through a rebuild in a much quicker time period than we all thought was reasonable? Have they rebuilt the farm system to be top level, not once, but twice in the last 5 years? Yeah, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for a while. Do they draft and develop well? Yeah, they do. However, the one thing on their resume that they don't really have, like you said, is that they haven't had a lot of luck or ability, whatever word you want to use, in bringing in the veteran hitters that come in and they perform well. So that it's certainly a fair criticism, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt for a while because they're really good at a lot of other things. And oh, by the way, they're in first place right now, albeit because the rest of the American League West is bad. But right now, we're 54 games into a season. We're a third of the way through a season in which the Mariners are still in first place. So let's wait and see about whether or not Polanco works, Garver works, blah, 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 because we don't know. I think we could start to make some pretty good guesses based on what we have right now, but we don't know for sure that they haven't worked. And a couple of those guys have multiple years on their contract. So blah, 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 blah. Anyways, why have they had this bad luck? I don't know.
Like you said in your question, it's inexplicable, right? We talked about this on our CTZ show the other day. I asked you quite literally the same exact question. Like, when do you stop trusting the front office's process?
By the way, Ty.
Yeah, exactly. But especially when it comes to adding major league hitters, because again, like you said, they've earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to pitching, when it comes to drafting, when it comes to developing. Like, they've been really good in those areas, but adding major league hitters, the hit rate has been so few and far between. Now they've hit on some guys, especially recently, like Luke Raley, Josh Rojas. It seems like they've hit on those guys. You know, Gino was a huge swing because, like, and that's the thing, right? Is like they haven't added too many guys that they've asked them to do something that they haven't really been for the last couple of years. But Gino was one of those guys. He was one of those rare instances, and that actually worked out for them. Now, they also did that, you know, more recently with like Mitch Haniger, Luis Arias, where like they weren't coming off of good years. But for the most part, why we've been so supportive of these moves, why we've told you guys time and time again over the course of these past few off seasons, like, hey, we like these moves, we believe in these moves, it's because they've added guys who were good, right? Coming on, you know, that were coming off of good seasons. Kolten Wong coming off of a really good season. Teoscar Hernandez coming off of a really good season. Jesse Winker, when they acquired him, was arguably a top 10 hitter in all of baseball. Adam Frazier had a bad second half in 2021, but he was still an all-star player that year. You know, Mitch Garver, Jorge Polanco coming off of really good seasons. So clearly, like, let's assume for a second here, just for the sake of the discussion, for the sake of the argument, that Jorge Polanco and Mitch Garver, they don't get it together this season. They're disappointments, just like they've been through the first 2 months of the season for the rest of the year. Clearly, the front office is missing something. But with the information available to Colby and I have no idea what that is. That's well above our pay grades.
Yeah, because like you said, like it's not like you look at these moves they made and you're just like, Oh, that's going to be a disaster. I know people think they know that about like Kolten Wong, but they didn't. That was classic. Like, oh, it's the Mariners, so he's going to be bad.
But
Like,
also,
that's not a thing.
for some of these guys, like Kolten Wong, right? It's not a 5 to 10% regression. Like, it isn't natural regression. Like, these guys have literally fallen off of cliff. Like, Kolten Wong is out of the league right now. Jesse Winker is signing minor league deals after, again, literally like 3 years ago was a top 10 hitter in all of baseball. Like, how does that happen?
And keep in mind, he was like 28 when the Mariners signed him. Like, he wasn't even like 33, 34, where you're like, oh, well, he was older. That's why he fell off the cliff. Like, no, like, that's not what happened. Really, the only guy that I can think of that the Mariners have signed where like his demise or acquired, some guys you trade for, blah, 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 where like his like demise was like potentially like guessable, I guess, or predictable, was AJ Pollock, because he was 37 years old coming off of a bad year. But even then, he still hit lefties in his bad year, and that was the only thing he was supposed to do.
Tommy La Stella, too. Right. Which,
yeah, I mean,
like, that shouldn't have been as big of a deal as it ended up being.
Right, because they should have cut him in spring training and not given him the at-bats. But it's one of those things where I don't know. I wish I could give you a really good answer. I wish I could tell you like, oh, well, if you look, all of their swinging miss rates on fastballs were going down when they were all acquired by the Mariners, or, you know, this is a problem, or this was the problem. They need to tweak this. I got nothing, because by all accounts, Kolten Wong should have hit at least enough to warrant that deal working out. Jesse Winker should have hit. You know, Teoscar Hernandez actually overall was fine. Just very streaky. So it's not like that was a big swing and a miss, but
was way better on the road than he was at home.
Oh, significantly.
Yeah.
And some of that is that some of these guys are coming from hitters ballparks, and they're coming into the extreme pitchers ballpark, and they're not quite adjusting quick enough. And so it takes them a while to adjust, and then their whole season numbers get dragged down. But yeah, for the most part, I don't know. I don't know why.
I think some of it obviously has to be related to T-Mobile Park and transitioning to playing half of your season there at T-Mobile Park. But I also feel like that can be overblown to a certain degree. And again, when it's been now 3 off seasons where they've made these big offensive acquisitions and they haven't really panned out, like again, like Winker and Frazier in 2022, you know, Teo and Kolten Wong and Pollock last year, now Garver, Polanco, etc. The front office must be missing something here.
One thing that I think is you're in danger of, the fan base is in danger of kind of like overreacting in a sense, is you don't want this front office to stop trying, right? Go make another Jesse Winker trade. Like you should be trying to do that every single off season.
Right.
And, you know, just because like the alternative is you just sit here and you just waste this pitching staff and hope that Cole Young comes up next year and is really good right away, and he doesn't need a year or two to figure things out.
Right.
And you're just wasting Julio's prime, and you're wasting the pitching staff, and everybody's getting more expensive. Like, no, they need to be aggressive. They need to keep making deals like the Polanco trade, like the Winker trade. Like they have to keep doing it. So like the only thing you can't say is like, oh, well, all these weren't as good as I hoped, so they should stop doing it because they're not good at it. Can't happen. You have to keep going.
But again, they're adding good players, or like they're adding players who are coming off of good years is really the way that it should be worded, right? So you
with
like
most of the time with long track records too.
Like how do you adjust to that, right? Like
I mean, it's not like they're signing like one hit wonder guys either who had one good season at like 29, and they're like, oh well, yeah, he's clearly figured it out. No, they're signing guys with long track records. You know, they're signing guys with lots of production.
Yeah. And
they're just not working out. So
it's just,
I don't know why.
Yeah. The only thing that I can think of is there's something deeper here that we can't see from our point of view that they're just missing. Right. And they have to adjust for that, whatever it is they're missing. So we are going to answer a few more of your questions here coming up in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Game Time's last-minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Mariners kick off a 4-game set with the Astros tonight. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Let's continue Mailbag Monday here with Jake. Jake wants to know, Jorge Polanco is currently sporting a 39 WRC plus against the four seam so far this year, a pitch he has always been above average against. Some people seem to think it's a coaching problem. Some think it's bat speed, below average per baseball savant. What do y'all think is the issue? Yeah, I mean, the bat speed is below average per baseball savant, but the problem with that is there's only data for 2024, so we have nothing to compare that to, unless you have access to True Media's database, which I don't, Colby doesn't. So I can't look back at 2023 and see if, Polanco's bat speed was significantly higher last year and now it's taken a significant dive this year, because then that would probably make some sense, right? But we don't have anything to compare it to, like I said. So I can't make any conclusions based off of the bat speed. I can't make any conclusions on the coaching front because in general, that's just typically pretty overblown, but also I'm not in the clubhouse. So I don't know what they've tried to work on with Jorge and what they've tried to change, etc. That might be leading to these issues. I have no clue. Colby, do you have any insight that maybe I don't have here on this?
No, it's like you said, we can't tell you whether or not bat speed is a problem because we don't know what it was last year when he was still torching the fastball. I don't think that age is a concern here. He's 30 years old. Like it's not like he's 33, 34, like Garver, where you might say, oh, maybe it would make sense if his bat speed went down a little bit. It doesn't make a ton of sense for, a 29-year-old who's crushing fastballs to turn 30 and then not be able to hit fastballs. That just doesn't seem like that's going to happen overnight. So I don't know if it's a bat speed issue. I'm pretty confident it's not a coaching issue because I think the one thing that people overblow is just like how much influence a hitting coach has on a veteran established big leaguer. It's not a lot, right? In fact, like the hitting coach isn't even going to not necessarily they're not going to work with the player, but like Polanco has to go to Brant Brown. He has to go to DeHart and be like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Like they're not going to go to him and do that because he's a veteran. And that's not like hands-off coaching. That's not like laziness or anything like that. That is the way it works. These are professionals. And when you have the track record that Polanco does, he has to be the one to initiate change. He has to be the one to be open-minded and to ask for help because that's just the way baseball works. It's on him to try and fix these problems. And when he's willing to admit there is a problem, he can go ask the coaches for help and stuff like that. And that doesn't mean the coaches aren't like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Like, hey, look at this swing on the video, so-and-so. Like they can make suggestions, but until the hitter is ready and willing to make changes or thinks he has to, nothing's going to change. So I think just in general, the role that a hitting coach has or what a hitting coach gets credit and blame for is just generally overblown.
Right.
Because for most people, most professional, like big leaguers, established big leaguers, the hitting coach isn't there to hey, if you change this, then you're going to hit more fastballs like that. It's on the player. Right. If the player doesn't want to change, he's not going to. Yeah. I'm not saying that Polanco doesn't want to change or any of that. I don't know. We're not in the clubhouse. I just think in general, people overestimate, kind of the actual job of a hitting coach is.
Mariners to the Moon wants to know, do you think there is a meaningful difference between what Jonathan Clase and Cade Marlowe can offer the Mariners at the major league level? If so, what is it? If not, why do you think the Mariners are rolling with Clase over Marlowe? I think it's legitimately as simple as Jonathan Clase is a switch hitter. Yeah.
Is there, throw the question back up there. I'm going to answer this one question at a time because there's 3 of them.
Sure.
Is there a meaningful difference between Clase and Marlowe can offer the Mariners at the big league level? Yes, Marlowe can offer them significantly more. Now, if so, what is it? Well, Marlowe's better. So he could give them more. He's a better defender. He's a better base runner. He's a better hitter. If not, why do you think the Mariners are rolling with Clase over Marlowe? Like Ty said, because he's a right-handed hitter, or he can hit against left-handed.
He can
pitching.
stand in the opposite batter's box.
Yes, because to claim that Jonathan Clase can hit left-handed major league pitching is the biggest load of BS that this team has ever tried to sell anybody.
Yeah,
dude's running like a 30 WRC plus right now. Can't hit anything.
Yeah,
at the big league level, let alone specifically right-handed pitching or left-handed pitching.
Look, I like the guy. Fun prospect. Maybe he can be something one day. He's just not ready right now.
He's 21.
He's very clearly not ready. I don't know. This is what ultimately my issue was with them sending down Arias. It wasn't because they actually sent down Arias. It was who they sent him down for. Right? If you told me, oh, they sent down Arias for Cade Marlowe or Samad Taylor or Ryan Bliss, etc., I would have been like, oh, okay, fine, cool, great.
Yeah.
But for Jonathan Clase, who very much needs to work on some things down in the minors, like it's very apparent that he needs to do that if you want him to be anything. Right. And the other issue that I have with this is that you keep on impeding his momentum. We talked about this when they called him up the first time. He had only really a handful of weeks of good weeks above the high A level last year. You call him up to AAA. He has a couple of good weeks in AAA, and then it's like, okay, come up to the majors, man. And it was like, all right, well, you're impeding the first real momentum that he's built. And then you send him back down. He struggles for a little while. Then he starts getting it together. He was hitting really well right before they called him back up. And you've impeded that momentum again. For what?
Because God forbid we give Luke Raley at bats against Patrick Corbin, I guess.
Luke Raley, who, by the way, and it's only been 19 plate appearances, but still 121 WRC plus against lefties this year.
Also, a whole track record last year, again, in very limited plate appearances, that says he hits lefties fine, and his entire minor league career, which says he hits lefties fine. Literally zero evidence out there suggests that Luke Raley and Dominic Canzone should not face any lefties, even bad ones. But, Jonathan Clase can stand in the right-handed batter's box and take pitches, so I guess he's a better option than those two. It's stupid. Let's just call it what it is. It's stupid.
It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowingly stupid.
It's beyond stupid.
All right, we're going to answer a few more of your questions coming up here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, Mariners kick off a 4-game set with the Astros tonight. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. Let's get back into your questions here on Mailbag Monday. Seattle sports fan wants to know, as trade talks get louder, which prospects, if any, do you view as untouchable right now? Follow up. Who do you view as the most likely to be dealt come the deadline?
Zero untouchables. Now, are there players that are highly unlikely to be moved? I think there are a couple, sure. I think Colt Emerson is very unlikely to be moved. I think Johnny Farmello is really unlikely to be moved at this stage. And I think to a lesser extent, I would probably throw Laz into that mix, but I don't know. I think that's negotiable, and any of those guys could be in a deal for the right package. So zero real untouchables. As for who's most likely, I think in terms of like top prospects, I think one of Cole Young and Harry Ford is probably getting traded this
Yeah,
summer,
agreed.
unless the team collapses and like they're not in it and they're not actually buying, or they're
Right.
not like, maybe they're kind of doing that like, oh, we're kind of buying, kind of not thing. Then maybe they don't. But if they want to get an impact player, then Cole Young or Harry Ford gets traded this summer. I think this truly is going to come down to what player they're trying to get and how that team that has that player views those two guys. Because to me, they're pretty close in terms of like prospect value. If the team thinks Harry Ford can catch, they're probably going to prefer Harry Ford. If the team doesn't think Harry Ford can catch, they're probably going to prefer Cole Young. So I think they're really about equal in terms of being the best prospect that could be traded. I could see either one of them getting traded. Wouldn't shock me. I think Locklear has a decent chance to be traded. And those are the three now. Like who's most likely to be traded? It's like a Brody Hopkins type. It's no offense, Brody. It's
friend of the show now, Brody Hopkins.
Yes. It's like a Clase type. It's there are guys who are more likely to be traded, but in terms of like the big names, which is I think what the question is really getting at here, I think the most likely to be traded is going to be either Ford or Young. I don't think they would trade both. I don't see a player out there that they would trade both for. And then I would throw Locklear in the mix as well.
Next question here from Smothered Meatloaf. Okay. How do we explain the recent drop in strikeouts from the Mariners pitching staff? They have a 5.68 Ks per 9 over their last 10 games. That's down from around 8 for the season. I mean, for one, the bullpen's been a disaster.
Awful.
So
I think they allowed 20 runs on this road trip, the bullpen. That's like the least Mariner thing ever.
Yeah.
Really. But also, we've seen Luis Castillo go out there as his last two starts, and keep in mind he was pitching against the Yankees and the Orioles, like really good offenses.
Yeah.
And he, didn't have a lot of strikeouts, but he was still effective because he didn't have his best command and control and stuff. So,
right. I think you kind of said the answer there, right? Like over their last 10 games, you faced two of the best offenses in all of baseball.
Yeah. And so, plus one other thing to keep in mind is that like a lot of those starts, like they got ambushed early and they're kind of like their mode went from like, hey, keep them scoreless to like, hey, I got to get deep into some of these games because we're taxing the bullpen too much. So I got to be more aggressive. I got to I got to get them swinging so I can get deeper into these games. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, a big part of it is that the bullpen isn't very good. And, your lost Brash, who's always a great source of strikeouts. Munoz only pitched 3 times in the last 10 games, 4 times. So that's going to do something. And then, Castillo didn't have big strikeout games. Wu only had 1 strikeout yesterday, I think. So yeah, I mean, Kirby hasn't been very good this time around either. So a lot of times these teams they're jumping the starting pitching. They're not getting to 2 strikes because they're being very aggressive early. And then the bullpen has just been bad, objectively bad for the last, 2 weeks or so. And that includes Gabe Spire, who was racking up a ton of strikeouts. And, Stanek has been really hit or miss all year. They don't have Brash, so that hurts. So yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but mostly I think it's just that over the last 10 games, they played 7 against the Yankees and the Orioles. And, we know what the strategy is. By the way, the Astros are going to use the same exact strategy in
every
all 4
team
games.
is.
Yep. Get the fastball early, hit it. Take your swing at it. It's the best pitch you're going to get. Swing at it early. And so, it's tough to strike guys out when they kind of refuse to get into 2 strikeouts against you. So I think it's a combination of all those things.
Last question here from Hunter. If you're Jerry, what trade are you making today to improve this team? Something revolving around the bullpen. We just talked about
who's available,
right. But I think you could get Austin Adams from the A's right now.
Sure. It's tough because, bullpen arms, they actually kind of get more valuable the closer you get to the deadline because you have a clearer picture of who's in it, who's out of it.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I would say go get Tanner Scott, I guess. I don't know exactly the arm, but
bullpen help, but not in the same vein as like Mike Baumann, right? Where you're just taking a shot on a guy that you like legit established is doing well right this second. Bullpen help.
Go get a bullpen arm that's going to hurt a little bit to give up the prospect. Like, go get an arm where like the prospect you're giving up to acquire him is going to hurt a little bit. You're going to be like, ooh, that's tough. Do it. It's worth it.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Batnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.